Okay, well, let's do an introduction. First of all, let's start with name and birthday.
Old as dirt.
That's pretty old.
Marlena Gail Bicknell, born December 27th, 1944.
1944. What time were you born?
8/20 wartime.
8/20 wartime.
Wartime.
Okay.
That's what it says on my birth certificate.
Okay, was
Wartime.
that in the morning?
No, evening.
Evening. Okay. I don't know what wartime is. Okay, so
During World War II.
where were you born at?
Clovis, New Mexico.
New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Did you spend a lot of time there?
Actually, no, we lived in Texas. I think that was the closest hospital.
Really? Had to drive to another state for a hospital.
Yeah, it's only just over yonder. If you ask all my cousins, just over yonder.
Okay, okay. So your family went from Texas to Clovis, New Mexico for your birth. Where did they live in Texas?
They lived in Bovina, which is about 10 miles, 12 miles from there. You
Yeah?
can see it.
Oh, so it's very close.
Flat country.
Okay, okay. Yeah. You can see for miles out there.
Miles and
Yep.
miles.
Yep. How long did you spend there in Texas?
We lived in Texas till I was 9 years old in the 3rd grade.
Yeah.
We moved in with Aunt Betty and Uncle Gus for the summer till they found us a place and they called it Wolf Creek.
Wolf Creek.
Uh-huh.
So you went all the way down from Texas to
Medellin
that
Falls.
little place down there at Wolf Creek. Okay. Tell us a little bit about your dad. What did your dad do? Tell us his name first of all.
Benjamin Lewis Hillett Jr.
Okay.
He ran a propane truck when we was in Texas
Mm-hmm.
to the farmers so they had gas to run their stuff. And then he worked in Monterey Mines when we moved to Washington.
Yeah. Okay, so he worked in the mines. It's quite a transition from propane truck to mines. Do you know if he did mining before you went to Texas?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? What did he do aside from?
He was in the service when I met Mother.
What did he do?
He was a sergeant in the Army.
Do you know what he did in the Army?
He trained people to go overseas and fight in the war.
He was a drill sergeant. Yeah. He didn't have any other occupation?
Not that I know of.
Huh.
Kind of dumb about that. I never thought to ask.
Yeah, I've just always been curious. Okay.
Was he really? He was a guard at the White House.
Well, that's not one I've heard before.
No, I
That's
haven't
very
either.
interesting. Yeah, okay, so he was a guard at the White House, among other things. Okay, tell us a little bit about your mom.
Her name was Betty Jean Martin. She was from Michigan. Daddy said that the companies would just pack up and move every time a new song come out, like Chaganoo Choo Choo, you know, that song come out. They moved. And that's how I ended up meeting Mother in Detroit.
Wow. Wow. And what did your mom do?
She was a kid. They met and married 2 days after her 18th birthday,
Wow.
February of 1944.
Yeah? Yeah. And where did they get married? Do you remember? You know?
I think it was Detroit, but I'm not sure.
Detroit. Wow, way over
Yeah.
there.
Uh-huh.
That's cool.
And she traveled by train down to Texas and lived down there with his father
Yeah?
in that area.
Wow. Where did you start school?
Bovina.
Bovina.
I went
Yeah.
to the 3rd grade there.
To the 3rd. Where did you go to 1st and 2nd?
There.
There. So you
Yeah, I
went to
through
1,
the
2, and
3rd.
3.
Through the 3rd.
Okay. Okay. So, so you stopped at the 3rd grade, went to Medellin Falls.
Hmm. We
do you-
lived the summer in Ione.
Yeah. Do you remember any of your teachers down there?
In Texas?
Yes.
I know a Mrs. Rhodes, but I can't remember if she was there or in Medellin Falls. I think she was my 3rd grade teacher was Mrs. Rhodes in Texas. And then Lucille Hooper was my teacher. And Mrs. Moon is the one that flunked me. I remember that. On the way to the movie on the last day of school, she said, "Oh, by the way, you flunked." So I had to do the 4th grade over again.
Wow. Wow.
Mrs. Hooper was a fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Moon was a fifth.
That one year, they were both the same, and I went to Mrs. Hooper the second, and didn't flunk it.
Well, I did.
She didn't like us.
Rough
little
teacher,
girls.
Why
apparently.
didn't Mrs. Hooper like you, Helen?
I don't know.
I don't know.
David too, and Mom finally put her foot down.
Yeah.
And I did flunk the foot.
So they left it to Mrs. Bates to flunk me the next year.
Yeah. So you moved to Medellin Falls.
Lived there till I was 18.
Uh-huh. To describe the house you live in there, the Wolf Creek.
It was a log cabin, one room, the
Uh-huh.
whole thing. It had an outhouse, no running water until Daddy put it in.
Mhm.
We had the refrigerator in a milk bucket, or milk box out in the creek. We'd go out and get it, and we'd go get water that way too. And we thought we was really uptown when we got an inside toilet. One
Wow.
whole winter, it was an outside toilet.
Wow.
The log house, I can't remember if it was built by or helped build by Mama's daddy, Marky Martin.
Mhm.
And I have a picture somewhere of him and his horse in front of it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And you stayed there for all.
No, I can't remember if I was in the 6th grade when we moved up on the hill.
I was in the fifth, so you must have been in the fifth.
5th grade when
Okay.
we moved up on the hill. And Kathy was born. She was a baby.
You were 2 years ahead of me, so you were in the sixth.
Yeah. Kathy was a baby when we moved up on the hill. She was about 2.
Mhm.
And it was the Rice's place.
Okay.
The Rice's bought it.
Mhm.
I can't remember. But it was a 2-bedroom house.
Aha. Moving up.
Moving up in the world.
Moving up. What happened to the log cabin after you moved out?
It just kind of sat there for a long time. And I guess the people moved in and
No, Beecham moved in right after we moved
Did we?
out.
Then
The Beech-
you
their
I know
house
we
burnt
pulled
down.
a shed up next to it, and that was Mom and Daddy's bedroom. They took the window out and cut it out and went out, and that was Mom and Dad's bedroom. Was a shed that we built in there. We pulled in there, and that was the extra room. And then our bunk beds was on that one wall. Todd, he loved him. Bobby was the top one because he's the skinniest one, could get up the fastest. There were 4 bunk beds high, and he was on the top,
Wow. 4 bunk beds
high.
high.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's one you don't see anymore.
No, Kathy's crib was at one side, and then I had a bed on. I don't know if anybody didn't think I was strong enough to get up the top or what, but I had a single bed, one of the single bunk beds on the one side next to the crib.
Wow. Wow. So you move up to the other place, and you were in 5th grade, you said?
Yes,
Yeah?
5th or 6th grade.
Remember any of your teachers there in Medellin Falls?
No, gracefully, I forgot a lot of them. I went through the 11th grade, so I Mrs. Kane was one. Mrs. Who was the dancer? Her and her husband. She was home ec teacher.
Mrs. Drury was a 7th grade teacher.
I can't remember.
Mrs. Fairburn?
Fairbairn.
She
Mrs.
was
Fairbairn. She
home
was
ec-
in high school. She was my
Home ec.
home ec teacher. She was in our PE. I can't remember what else. And Mr. Ranchler. I can remember him.
Wasn't he in band too?
No, Cox was a band teacher from the time I was, because I had took trumpet up in the 6th grade and went right through the 11th in high school.
Trumpet seems to be a popular instrument among our family members.
Well, they told me I wanted to be play the clarinet, but my teeth wouldn't work right, and I couldn't do the reed right. So they said, "You're best for trumpet," so that's what I got.
Mm-hmm.
We
Wow.
were accordion before that.
Yeah, I played accordion for a while when we lived there, till Grandpa died, and then I wouldn't touch it anymore.
Grandpa?
Grandpa Martin.
Okay, what?
Fortunately, he put up with my squeaking and squawking, and I'd play him serenade almost every night. And when he died, I quit playing it.
What do you remember about him?
He was a funny fart. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Like how?
He had a stroke, and Daddy had made him a wheelchair. It was a kitchen chair with wheels on the bottom of it, and it was too much grace to sit down in it, so he'd push it, and he'd kind of flopped when he walked, and it was funny to watch. And he would, we had a telescope borrowed from a friend, and he'd sit out there and watch the mountain, and watch deer. And he'd say, "Come look at this deer." Well, he shook. Well, by the time you got there, you never saw a deer, and he'd get so mad at us. But I'd sit and talk with him, and when he got well, we were going to go to Hawaii and run black horses with white feet in the surf in Hawaii. Him and me. That's what we was going to do.
Yeah. So he was really kind of a comedian, almost.
Kinda.
Yeah.
He was a neat old fart. He loved horses,
Mm-hmm.
and I can remember in Uncle Gus's house they had windows that opened up. I thought that's so cool. Both sides would open up like this, and he'd holler, and the horses would come stick their head in the window, and he'd play with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It was
What other things do you remember that were interesting about him?
I don't really know. He one time they butchered a cow that they bought from us, and he went down to help them, and that was a sad thing because we loved that cow, and they butchered him at the base of the driveway where the trestle went over the top, and they hung her right there and just gutted her and threw it over the bank. And he come up the house so mad because they had gutted that cow right there, and it was just so weird. And this was at Wolf Creek, and he stayed with us quite a bit. I remember one Christmas, we were kind of asked what we wanted for Christmas, and I wanted a watch, and I foolishly said, I don't want anything else if I can have a watch. That's all I got. And Grandpa thought it was Grandpa thought it was terrible that I only had one Christmas present, so he gave me a real pretty scarf. I can't remember what, but it was silky. I can remember that. And he said I didn't think she should have just one Christmas present under the tree. And we always thought Mom and Daddy couldn't love us because there was never any Christmas presents under the tree. Said Mom and Daddy all had Santa Claus on it. From Santa Claus, never Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
But I had one under the tree from Grandpa.
Now, you mentioned a tree in the house. Did you ever go out and get one yourself?
Oh, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The first year we moved up on top of the hill, we went out to get, and it was deep, deep snow. I mean, it's all maybe 2 feet. Deep snow. And we trucked out through the woods out behind the house and got us a Christmas tree. Mama made us set it on the porch so the branches would come down and look pretty. I cannot remember what that tree looked like, but it must have been a pip. But we tromped out through the deep, deep snow to get that tree. So
was it you who chopped it down or somebody else?
I can't remember chopping it down myself, but we all must have done something with it.
Yeah? Yeah, well, that's interesting. What kind of ornaments did you put on it? What did you put on it?
There's a story about the Christmas tree. Daddy put the lights on. We were never allowed because they were the old-fashioned ones. And one burned out, you'd had to work on through all of them to find the burn-out light bulb. It's not like these now that you know exactly which one burned out. So we was never allowed to touch the Christmas lights. And we could put the balls on and the garland if we put it on the way he told us to. It had to be just the right hanging. And we could put the tinsel on only if we put on one at a time. You start at the bottom of the tree and you worked forward to the branch out. And it had to hang just right. And if we got putting 2 on there, we couldn't do it anymore. So we got to go as high as we could reach.
Well, that's interesting. That's pretty cool.
Christmas was I remember Christmas Eve, we'd bring the tree in and we'd start putting the decorations on it. Then we'd go, and Uncle Gus would bring Santa Claus down on the horse and sleigh. And we'd go to the Christmas tree in Medley Falls, and we'd get a bag of nuts and candy, and either an apple or an orange in this bag, only till you're 12 years old. And I had to get Mom to prove I was only 12 for my last one, because they thought I was too tall. I had to be over 12. And then we'd go back, and we'd have oyster stew with the little funny square oyster stew with the funny little crackers every Christmas Eve, and Mama would tell us a Christmas story. And then we'd go to bed, and I'd go, Barbara, you awake? Barbara, you awake? I'd get her awake, and then it was David and Danny and Bobby and Kathy. But they all had to be awake before we could get up. It took me several hours because some of them would go back to sleep. And you'd have to start all over again. And I think just about the time I get them all awake so we could come out, Mom and Daddy probably just got to bed.
Oh no.
And we'd come out and we'd get to open Christmas presents.
You remember when you and I got up in the middle of the night and opened our bride dolls? And then rewrapped the packages and put them back under the tree?
That's where I get doing that.
And we never did it again because we were so disappointed. Everybody else was so surprised on Christmas morning with what they got, and of course we already knew what it was.
Mhm.
And we both knew our parents couldn't tell the packages had been opened and rewrapped,
Oh yeah.
tears and all.
Yeah.
You also forgot to say you always got to put the angel on the top of the tree.
That was my angel.
Wow.
Nobody else ever got to put the angel on top of the tree.
I don't know what the one thing you had to be real careful with it because all its wings and the glowing part around it was fiberglass, and it poked and made your hands hurt if you did it wrong.
Mhm.
But I don't know why I got to do it.
We wouldn't know that because we didn't
Never
get to touch it.
Uh huh. Now, odds are you weren't tall enough. Did somebody lift you up?
I think Daddy did.
Yeah?
Daddy always held me up to do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty
Christmas
cool.
tree. Christmas tree was something else. I loved the Christmas tree until my 16th birthday, and I asked my mother. I says, "Can we take the Christmas tree down? I want my birthday to be my birthday, not Christmas." And that's the only time because it'd go up Christmas Eve, and we'd take it down New Year's Eve or New Year's Day every year.
Wow.
Yeah. And one Christmas we got ice skates. All of us got ice skates with red sweatshirts with hoods and hand things, keep your hands warm with our names on them.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you go ice skating?
The front yard.
The
The
front
driveway.
yard?
The driveway.
Wow.
Yeah, we skate really good on driveways. Mama had tried, she patted down all the snow in a big circle and she got the sprinkler out there and she tried to get it frozen so we'd have a pond for Christmas. Of course, we didn't know why then, but she tried to get it, never did work. And I think the only time we ever went anywhere else was down at the river. There was,
Where in the river?
it was between Wolf Creek and the Perkins place down a bank, and there was kind of a pond that would freeze over, and we could go down there. But Mama and Daddy always went with us.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember any other Christmas presents but our bride dolls in those ice skates.
Wow.
Well, all new sleds. We all got sleds one year.
Oh yeah, we'd go sleigh riding down the hill all the way down to Perkins. We'd call them and tell them it was sleigh riding, and they wouldn't come up without honking and let us know. And then Daddy'd drive down, pick us up, and take us back up the hill in the rig, so we didn't have to walk.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a little hill there.
I can remember my birthday. We went down on the sled, and I think Kathy was on top of me, and I was on top of somebody. And I kept telling Kathy, no matter what happens, don't let go. She didn't either. We got down at the bottom, hit gravel, and the first one went off, and I went off over the top of him. I hit gravel. I was picking gravel out of my chest my whole birthday. That was awful. But Kathy didn't get hurt. She held on.
Smart.
She no dummy.
Smart.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. You mentioned a horse-drawn sleigh. Was that yours, or was it?
It was Uncle Gus's.
Uncle Gus's.
Yeah. I can remember it was the first week or so we got from Texas. We was spending with Uncle Gus. And all of us, Kenny and Barbara and David and I can't remember if Janie was big enough yet, but we decided we was going to go horseback riding.
Mm-hmm.
And we drug the saddle down off and drug it all the way over to the fence where the horse was. And we got that sucker back up on the fence. And we was going to saddle that horse by ourselves, and Uncle Gus caught us. That was not a good day. We got a spanking.
Apparently he didn't like your idea of going out.
No, he said, "Do you know what that thing could do to you?"
Yeah, that's true. Horses could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember Mama telling me about one when I was 2 years old. It was in Texas, and I've got a picture, so that's the only other reason I know it was there. They said the horse had burrs on its belly, and I was about 3. I was out there pucking the burrs off his belly. And Mama says, "Darling, come to Mama." No. Pucking the burrs. And it took her a long time to coax me out from underneath that horse, pulling those burrs off his belly. And she said when she finally got me away from that horse, went straight up in the air like this and just bounced for a long time. But he did. She said he was just quivering while I was doing it, but he didn't hurt me.
Wow.
A wild horse. It was
Wow.
terrible. I thought it was funny. I just wouldn't come to her.
Huh.
So I must have a fixation with horses. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, where did you ride on this sleigh? Did you go all over the place or just certain places?
Snow sled.
Yeah.
Sled. It was
The
down
horse
there.
drawn.
Oh, we didn't get to ride with that. It was only Santa Claus got to ride that.
Oh, so you never got to be on
We
that?
never got to be on the sled with him. But I can remember I never did. I
Wow.
can't remember. Yes, it was
Yeah.
awful. Santa Claus got to ride it. I didn't.
Well,
But
that's nice.
we did. Uncle Gus had a big sleigh that we could sit on, about 10 of us, and there was a steering wheel in the front of it. And can't remember if both Uncle Gus and Uncle Don had broken legs, but Uncle Gus did. He was the brake man in the back. And it had brakes in the back, and we just kind of sandwich in all the way down there, and we'd bobsled the bottom, and Daddy'd come down in the big truck and drag us all back up the hill. But you're screaming and yelling all the way down the hill. That was the only sled I got to ride on. That was fun.
Do you remember any memorable wrecks with that one?
No,
No.
no,
Well,
they did a good job keeping us up straight. I can remember that Mama wanted to go. That's what we lived at Wolf Creek at one point of that, and Grandpa stayed and babysat. Somebody had chicken pox. It was either Bobby or Kathy. I can't remember which one, but I can remember Grandpa babysitting while we went sleigh riding.
Wow.
Yeah, real cool.
Yeah. Yeah. How did things change between the house at Wolf Creek and the house up on top of the hill? Was there a lot of changes that were involved in that, or did you just feel like, oh, hey, we just moved from one house to another?
Yeah, kind of like
Yeah.
that. I don't remember missing it a whole lot except the creek
Mm-hmm.
and the great big root cellar.
And we had power and water in the house.
Yeah,
And a
yeah.
tub.
Yeah, we had a bathtub. We had a shower at Wolf Creek after a while. We didn't have it for a while because I can remember the hot tub on the wood stove. And we had an inside toilet and shower, or bathtub, and 2 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
We got to sleep in a room.
The boys in one, the girls in the other, Mom and Dad on the couch.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And the bedrooms had bunk beds all the way around them.
Oh yeah,
Big tall bunk beds, I remember that.
yeah.
It's always fun to go to their house because you can go climb on the bunk beds.
Barbara and I slept in a double bed, and the baby at the time then was Christine, and she'd sleep with us, and she woke up. We talked with her, and as long as you smiled, you could call her a brat and all that other stuff, and she wouldn't cry. But if you called her a brat in a bad tone, then she'd bawl and say Gail. She said Gail before she said Mama, and she'd point to me and say Gail. And get me in trouble, so I'd say, "You are such a little snot. I hate taking care of you. You're such a little brat." And if I smiled, she'd just laugh and coo. She thought that's so cool. She didn't know I was being facetious.
Yeah. Well, it does happen from time to time.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yes. You mentioned Christmas. What other big holiday events?
4th
did you
of
guys
July.
have? 4th of July. Tell me a little bit about that.
We all go out the lake. All the Martins and everybody go out there, and I can't remember who would get stuck going out there the day or two before to get a campground. And we'd go out the lake, and everybody'd ask for Mama's baked beans because it was a surprise whether we'd get rocks or potholder in it that year. But she made good baked beans. Just surprised what you'd find in it.
Yeah. So it was Sullivan Lake.
Yeah, it was up
Yeah.
in Sullivan Lake. We did a lot of mushroom hunting with Aunt Betty. She could smell them. We did a lot of mushroom hunting up there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Played in the creek. We didn't do a whole lot of swimming. I didn't know how to swim till I was 46 years old.
Wow.
I faked it a lot, but I didn't swim. I was scared of the water.
Yeah.
But I had swimming lessons. Did dead man float, walking there on the bottom, thinking nobody could tell I was walking. Didn't know they couldn't see my feet up there. And so we went to Sullivan Lake, but I didn't get in the water a whole lot.
Yeah.
I was scared of it.
Because I remember in the summertime, didn't all 3 of our families pretty much live at the lake for?
Just about. The guys
Like
would
a
travel
couple-
back and forth,
yeah.
they had to work, and we'd spend a lot of time up at the
We
lake.
had a great big army type tent.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember sitting in it.
Daddy's was a big 4x4 truck, and he had that covered with
Mhm.
canvas or something, so like a tent, and back it in there. We live out there. It was cool.
Wow. So that was 4th of July.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
That
think
was
that
pretty much a couple of weeks in the middle of the summer there, that everybody
Yeah.
just lived right at the lake.
Yeah. The
That's
guys
back
had to go to work.
before the Forest Service is the way it is
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
You couldn't camp and eat and have fun now, but you could then.
Wow.
They just turned us loose. Great time.
Yeah. When you were young kids and just out having fun, being wild and crazy and reckless, what were some of the goofy things that you'd do? You know, you mentioned sleigh riding. You mentioned going out to the lake. What are some of the other things that you'd do?
Making up stories about the graveyard.
Making up stories about the graveyard.
We had a graveyard behind our house up on top of the hill.
Really?
And there was, the biggest stone was tall. It seemed to be like 5 feet tall, but it probably wasn't anywhere near that. We were just short kids. But it seemed like it was really tall, and we'd make up stories on how those people were dead, and how come like poisoned and all sorts of things. And
Uh-huh.
Shot.
Shot.
Ran away from home, got caught. Chained up in the truth cellar. And
But there, I think there was like some little kids, and there was a young boy, and I can't remember. But we'd sit there and make stories up about what they were
especially
doing.
when we had slumber parties and we scared the city kids.
Oh yeah, fun to
Up there in
scare.
the dark.
Yeah, fun to scare the city kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Manly Falls city kids.
Yeah, big town.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. So you had slumber parties and you did it. Did you ever go on any adventures as little kids and decide, hey, we're gonna go hiking, we're gonna go see someplace new?
About the biggest adventure we ever did was go up the water hole up behind the house. We'd go up this, and that at that time I think it was a big cement kind of cistern type thing for the creek water would run into it and then run down over the side and down to that, and that's where they started the pipe water to come to the house. Eventually, it come that way,
Wow.
and then. I think that run the whole hill though, didn't it? Everybody, Uncle Don's place was watered there, the Tuckers, the old people that lived across the street from us.
Can't remember their names.
I can't remember either.
Anybody
It was,
across from us?
there was a young couple that lived there, and then the old fart married the young woman, his wife's daughter, and they lived there for a while, and then another couple lived there, but I can't remember any of them's names.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But as we lived close enough to Uncle Don's, we'd go play, or we'd drive over to Uncle Gus's, the family,
Yeah.
and we'd play there. And one time we went there, and Mama always counted heads as we got back in the car, and we got all the way home, and there was one head less. It was Bobby, and everybody had left Uncle Gus's at the same time. They were going someplace, and we went home. And I said, well, Bobby stayed there. That was the wrong thing to say. I got in trouble for that one, too. And they had to drive all the way back to Uncle Gus's, and Bobby was sitting on the porch. He was about 4, maybe.
Said, I knew you'd come back and get me.
Yep, I just knew you'd come back and get me. He sat right there just patiently waiting for him. They come back and got him. That's a long drive from our house. At least it seemed like it then.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
But let's see. I'm trying to get generational here. Kids today, when they consider playing, they consider video games and playing things like that. So, give us an idea of. You said we were playing. Give us an idea of what playing was to you guys.
We weren't allowed in the house on Sundays. You either come in the house and sat down and shut up, or you went outside and played.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy built us a fort. They only had the floor and the railings around it, and I think it was what, about 3 feet off the ground, 3 or 4
Actually, it
feet.
was about 9.
Was
and
it?
there
It
was
seemed like
three sections he built out in the trees.
that
So
you'd
we had
play out
bedroom,
there.
kitchen, and living room.
Yeah, we'd play out there by the hour, or walk the pig fence. That was a big deal. Walk around the pig fence. So you'd have to see how far you could walk without grabbing a branch to keep you from falling. And
You
we
didn't want to
did.
fall into the pig pen.
No, you don't want to fall in the hog pen. And we walked the trestles. We got into trouble for that a lot.
That was a no-no.
Yeah, we'd always practice in case a train came. And we'd climb down over the sides on the beams going across the side, and we'd sit there and pretend like a train went by. Well, his mother didn't find out. And there was places we were not allowed to go
Which
at
were?
Wolf Creek. What was that rock, like a big rock bank that we weren't allowed to go up on at all?
There's a mine up there.
Well, I knew there was a reason why we weren't allowed to go up there, but we played in the old sheds between the trestle, because the road goes over the top of the trestle now and drops down into it. Before it went underneath the trestle, come like this. And we had a couple of sheds along that side there, and we played in them because they smelled really weird, like old musty moss. But we would make up stories about what was there, and we did that a lot. And at Wolf Creek, they had a big old plow horse, like one of those, what's that deer that?
Clydesdale.
Clydesdale horse, and we'd follow him around out in the fields. We had not a foggiest idea how to get back to the house. We'd take off and follow that horse out through the pasture and up through the hill and come down. And it was like if we got behind him too far, he'd stop and wait for us and look. And then he'd walk some more and we'd follow him some more. He always brought us right back to the barn. And we followed him a lot. We followed Uncle Gus's dogs out in their dog that he loaned us for a while. And through the thistles, or the thimbleberry bushes, and along the creek bed, we followed the dog out there. And then he took that dog home and found us Mike. Neat dog, black and white dog. And when we would sit there and play, and we was trying to figure out a name for him, and we was feeding him, we was all hollering all sorts of different names. I can't remember what all of them was, and I can't remember who said Mike. And the dog turned around and looked at us, so that was his name, Mike. He answered to Mike. He was a good dog unless it thundered. If it thundered, that dog would bury himself wherever. He died.
Wow.
But Mike was with us a long time. Even when Mama moved to Spokane, Mike was
Go
still
out
with
and
us.
kill snakes and then bark for an hour.
Yep, he just gets sick as a dog. He hated that.
Got sprayed by skunk and hit by porcupines.
Oh,
several times.
porcupines are bad. The worst one he ever got was when Daddy was out there trying to find him and flipped him in the eyes with a flashlight and blinded him for a minute, and the porcupine blindsided him.
Ugh.
And one went through his eye, and it either went through his mouth and out through his eye, or through his eye and down and come out through his mouth. I can't remember, but it was awful. And that he'd be laying down someplace, and if it started to hurt, he'd get up and howl, and he'd never go back to that spot because he thought that's what was hurting him.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a funny dog.
He was a bird dog.
Yeah, he was a pretty dog. Uncle Gus found him tied to a tree, I think, somewhere, and brought him to us. And
Said he was an old dog. He'd only lived for a year or so. And
Yeah.
the damn thing was with us for 10 years.
at least every bit of 10.
Okay. So you were playing and all of this. Let's go into school now. You went to Lily and Bailey?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
The old, it was the high school by the time we got there, but it was grade school at the same time for a long time. The grade school was upstairs and the high school was downstairs.
Okay, so you're talking about across the street then.
Yeah. The younger ones went to the new school, but I never did go to the new school. I was already into the high school building.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so know any teachers from there?
Tried not to know any of those.
Yeah.
I never went to the new school either.
I thought you spent 1 year in there. It must have been you spent the 1 year in there, huh?
Yep.
It was. They got the playground and everything. All we had was an open field. There was nothing to play at.
Yeah.
Hopscotch on the porch.
Yeah, or if you could bully the boys into letting you play marbles, you could play marbles. But that was about it. Not too much to play. I remember the library. It seemed so far down. The boys would jump out the window. Different boys would jump out the window of the library. But what was the bus driver's name? He was the bus driver from the time we cleared down at Wolf Creek.
Joe
Mr.
Busser.
No.
No.
Rosen. No,
He
Rosen.
had 2 twin daughters, and Paul was his son's name. I
I
want to
was
say.
going to say Rosenberg, but I
Stewart. George Stewart.
I don't think that was it either.
Robert.
Robert, that was it. And he had 2 twin daughters that were in high school. We thought they were so grown up and beautiful.
Carolyn and Kathy.
Yeah, they were going to be nurses or something. And one was going to be a nun, and one was going to be a nurse. And he was our bus driver from way down when we was at Wolf Creek. And in the spring, we didn't go to school because the bus had come down the hill to Perkins's, And we would walk the railroad tracks with the babysitter. What was her name?
Elida Caves?
Mm-hmm.
Elida Caves.
And we'd walk the railroad tracks until the uphill road started getting bad, and the bus couldn't get down that far because he couldn't make it the river part, getting to Wolf Creek. And so we missed about 3 weeks of school in the spring because of bad roads.
Wow.
So, but we'd walk the railroad tracks back and forth from there for a while, and then get back there. I can remember one year Mama had a picnic, the last day of school picnic, and everybody walked from town. All the grade school walked from town all the way to the railroad tracks, all the way out to Wolf Creek. It had to be a couple of miles clear from town, I would think.
Yeah. What? 5?
5 at least.
It seemed like it was taking us a long time to get there, but you know how exuberant kids can get. And
Yeah.
we had barbecued hot dogs, wasn't it? And
Mom went to a lot of work for that.
yes, she did, and it was the last day of school. That was one of the
Very
first
nice
couple of
thing.
years that we lived there, and before we moved up on the hill. And Tucker boys scared the snot out of us.
We were terrified of the Tuckers.
Oh yeah, you just didn't get close to them. They's crazy. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry if any of them see this.
Now, why do you say that? What scared you?
They were crazy.
They were crazy. That's no kidding.
Brett
Old man
Henry.
Tucker married a woman who was supposed to be of royal blood or something.
Money.
Yeah, and she had a couple of boys. Oh, Eddie was always bad. He always said, "I saved a place for Gail," and I'd sit with him, and he stunk.
Yeah, but it was Carl that scared everybody.
Yeah,
He
the
was
older.
one.
The older one. And he chased us down the railroad tracks one time. The babysitter grabbed up David, and we was all running down the railroad tracks, which is a trick in itself, until we got home. And then she went up the hill. Gregory, that was her name. The one that walked to school with us was the Gregory girl, wasn't it? Because she'd walk down the hill and go to school with us, and she'd take care of us coming back. She was in high school, I think. Probably real old, like 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, ancient.
Ancient old.
What was the Tucker boy that was your age, Kathy? Albert.
Albert.
That's right. And Connie was in my class.
I can remember walking home from Job's daughters one night because Mrs. Lee was afraid to go up the hill in the wintertime, and there was snow everywhere. The roads was really slick, and I had a pair of real thin slippers on my feet, and we lived at the top of the hill then. And I could remember seeing a dark shadow going down the road as I was coming up, and I just knew it was a Tucker's, and I kept going, "Lord, please don't let it get me. Please don't let it get me." And I was gauging on how far I was, but how the lights from Medellin was up, and how much farther I had to get home.
Uh-huh.
And I got home, and my feet felt like they was frozen to, and Mama took me in the bathroom. We was sitting on the toilet, and she put my feet in water, and I thought she was putting boiling water on me. It hurt my feet that bad, and it was cold water.
Wow.
My feet were that
We would
cold.
have rather seen a bear on that road as one of the Tuckers.
Oh yeah, we were scared to death of them.
Well, when he,
Just that and that
saw
black
us-
dog. That dog would chase us everywhere. And Daddy kept saying, "Carry a stick in your hand. And if he starts to bite you, stick your hand in his mouth." Yeah, right. I'm going to stick my hand in his mouth. But that one time for the thunderstorm, Mike ended up in that black dog's doghouse. And that's where we found him one time after a big thunder and lightning storm.
Wow.
Did that big black dog, did that belong to Nonnets?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that dog used to scare us. He lived just a little bit further down from Uncle Don's, and we always prayed he wouldn't catch us. He mysteriously
Well, was that
disappeared.
right across from Uncle Don?
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, because we took an inner tube and tied it to both sides of the gate post. Skip and Dave and I. And she had guinea hens in the field across. And we got this, and it took Skip and David pulling that rubber band. And we put rocks in it and then shoot it across there, and we were killing her.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Because they made really loud squawking
Oh, they
noises.
scary noises.
But
Yeah.
not near as loud as she squawked when she called Mother and told her what us children were doing to her hens.
I led a sheltered life. I don't remember
Oh,
any of this.
Oh, yeah, but if there was anybody in trouble, it was me.
You never got in trouble.
Oh, yeah. But I don't remember Nod's dog. I remember getting in trouble.
Oh, he was.
I remember
He
Nonnets' dog.
he was the biggest, meanest black dog I've ever seen in my life. I was scared to death of him. was awful.
Yeah. Okay, so you went to middle school there. Did you go to high school there?
Yes. I went, we moved to Spokane when I was in the 9th grade for part of 1 year, and then I moved back with Daddy. But I went to school, Rogers High School. I went for about 6 weeks, I think, before I left home. And that was the scariest thing I've ever had happen in my life. Going back to Medley Falls was quite much more than I enjoyed that way. And I lived with the Fitzsimmonses, Leo and what was it? Lily. And I babysat their 2 kids. And then I lived with, let's see, I lived with the Pages for a while. And I lived with George Evans, no, was it George Evans? The Evanses, Clyde Evans in Medellin during, from 9th, 10th, and 11th. Through, I probably got them out of order, but I lived with those different families.
Uh-huh.
And,
Because Dad was batching, he was good.
yeah, it would be unseemly to live with Daddy. Got to. But
Backing up, what do you remember about when Mom left without us kids? She left all by herself. What do you remember about all that?
that was a hard time. We came home from school and Kathy and Christine was missing. We didn't know where they was. Mama wasn't there. We didn't really worry about Mama, but we was really worried about where Kathy and Christine was. They ended up being with, yeah, the older lady.
Oliver,
Kenny.
Mrs.
Kenny,
Oliver?
yeah, Kenny Oliver's mama. And Mama left a note, and Daddy started reading it, and he started to cry, and he made me read it to him. And somehow I had blocked out the entire letter, but I remember it hurt Daddy, and he sat there and he cried and cried and cried. And people from church brought us a big box of groceries. And I can remember they asked me, I was making Spanish rice or Mongolian stuff. Goulash. And they wanted to know how to make it. And I says, well, you start with this big pan. And he said, no, for 2. I says, I don't know. I still don't know how to cook for 2. And we stayed there with Daddy for a while, and then I got sick. And Daddy, I was running a bit of fever before Daddy left for work. And he told me to walk down to the hospital from school and see Dr. Richards there. Well, I walked in, I asked if the doctor was. I didn't say Dr. Richards. I did, and I sat there probably 3 hours before they says, well, which doctor do you want? Well, Dr. Richards, of course, to my eyes, Dr. Richards was the only doctor there. And they came, he came to see me, and I had, I had hepatitis just before that, but I had an appendicitis attack. And they put me in the hospital, and that's where they found out I had hepatitis. I got it from, they'd had several cases in high school, and they put me in the hospital. And Dr. Richards put Barbara in the hospital in the same room with me, and David and I think Danny were in another part of the hospital. So the insurance would pay for my hospital stay because I had hepatitis. And then Mama came back. And Daddy moved out. He moved into the apartments, and I felt like it was all my fault because Daddy had to move away. But they had a long list of stuff you can't eat because of hepatitis, and eggs is one of them, which still bothers me. But I love eggs, and that bothers me if I eat too much of it. And so she says, "Well, if Gail can't have caviar, none of us will." So we didn't have caviar. And I had to stay on this special diet for 3 months, I think it was, to keep my appendix from bursting. And then I went back to the hospital and had my appendix out after I'd had hepatitis. The cleaning lady, what was her name at the hospital? I can't remember. She come in and she says, that child's yellow. She really is. There's something wrong
She
with
was a
it.
German lady, wasn't
Yeah,
Martha
I
Fisher?
think-
Was
I
it
think-
Martha Fisher?
No,
She spoke with an accent. didn't
yes,
she?
she did.
Yeah,
She was from
did.
Ione. I can't remember what her name was. But she's the one that, and everybody in the hospital had to have hepatitis shots. They just loved me.
Everybody at the school that associated with us had to have
Hepatitis shots. Just everybody.
You say Hillock and everybody says, no, that's not their name anymore.
And I can remember when I had my appendix out, Daddy would come visit me. And I don't remember Mom ever come to the hospital to see me there. But when I had my appendix out, I met the Newmans there. I thought, ooh, hillbillies. Ooh. But I didn't know that's who they was for a long time after that. There had been a house fire in Ted and Newman's house. And I happened to walk down to the main lobby of the hospital and was standing there, and Cindy held on to me like I was a long lost relative that she held on to me that for an hour and a half. And Ann told me how the fire had started. She said if Ted had looked back through the window, he'd have seen the house on fire. She was trying to fill a gas lamp and didn't put the light out, and it was hot and it exploded and run down over the floor. She had a 2-year-old baby under the floor, under the table, and she caught on fire. And she'd keep coming and tell me more of the story and go back and look in the emergencies. Dr. Richards was with her, and she sat there for about an hour and a half and telling me everything that happened that night. Her hands were bandaged clear to her elbows. Her knees were bandaged to her boot tops. And she'd walk back and forth and pace, and then in come the Newmans, and I thought the Hillbilly Mountain had come in. I said, I'm going to my room. And the next morning I heard this god-awful scream, and they couldn't find Ann, but they could hear her screaming. They had told her the baby died. They took her to Spokane, but the baby had died, and she was pregnant with her. Tammy was the baby she was pregnant with at that time. But the first time I met her, I was 18 then. I was about 16 and a half when I had met her through this fire. And I had met Lonnie, and Lonnie's related to the Newmans. And we had gone out there, and she said, there's something about you. I don't know what it is, and I know you from somewhere. And we got talking about it, and she told me, she says, the hospital, you were there. And she told me, and nobody in the Newman family had ever heard that story. She just couldn't talk to him, but it was so fresh in her mind, and she was just so upset that she told me the whole thing. And that's how I got to know the Newmans, and then I got related with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story.
That's another story in itself. But I really thought they were the Hillbilly Mountains boys coming in when they just kind of burst through the door. And it was Willard and Ted and Fred, I think. And I just thought that.
What a terrible trio.
And 2 of those are twins, but they're not twins together. They have twins. Willard has a twin brother named Ward, and Fred has a twin brother named Ted.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Ted was the one that lost the little girl, and they had 4 boys. They had 4 boys after that. More
Wow.
children.
Wow, that's a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and then
what's the age range between their oldest and their youngest?
their youngest was 12 when I met her at 16, and their youngest one is younger than Todd, and he's 32, so he must be about 25, 26 years old now, and I'm 26 years older than Todd, so that'd make 24, 25 years between their first one and their last one.
Wow.
I knew it was a long range there, but they were still having babies.
Yeah, they call it Newmanville back on the back side of the river. You start out Ione, it's Newman's. It used to be.
Huh.
Yeah. I think the worst thing in my life after Mom and Daddy separated was when Grandpa died. He had a funny little whistle when he died, and his lower lip would puff out, and he'd blow the air through there and kind of whistle when he'd sleep. And when he passed away, it was still kind of puffed out there, so we didn't know he was gone for a while, because we'd go in getting ready for school, because the closet was in his room, and he was
ready for church. We had to get our good clothes
get
off
our
the top shelf.
had to get the clothes ready, and we didn't know that he wasn't there anymore. And then Mama found him, went in and checked on him. But I thought it was a school day, because I thought I was the only one who went to school, because I didn't want to be there when they took him out.
Church, we had special church shoes, and we had to stand on the bottom rail of the bed lean over to get the shoes off the top shelf of the closet.
I can believe
So
that.
we were up and down off that bed, honey, and of course to get down from there, you jumped on the foot of the bed and then went down.
Yeah.
And we were really pleased because we never woke him up.
Yeah. I can remember a funny thing about Grandpa. Barbara and I had gone to stay with Janie at, Uncle Gus still lived in Ione. He hadn't moved up on the hill yet. And we were sleeping pretend sleeping, on the couch, and we'd keep talking and giggling. And Grandpa says, if you girls don't shut up, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to beat you. We knew Grandpa wasn't going to beat us. And we'd just keep talking and giggling and talking and giggling. And pretty soon he'd come in there and he took his belt and went across the top of the bed like this and pop, his buckle hit me right in the mouth and bloodied my mouth. Grandpa picked me up and loved me. I thought he was going to die.
Cried.
Yeah. You can pour on more tears, you know, when you know you got a grown-up really feeling bad.
Oh yeah.
Is it true that Mom's hair turned white when Grandpa died?
It fell out in two big spots about the size of a silver dollar right here in the front. And for the longest time she combed it over so you couldn't see that. Well, when it come back in, that come in snow white. Yeah, just snow white. And then a very short time again, it come right out black again. But her hair fell out in two big circles right on her forehead when Grandpa died. And she just combed her hair another way so you couldn't see it, but it come back in just like his, silver, beautiful white.
Is it true that his cat climbed under the freezer and he couldn't get him out and he died under there or something?
No, but I remember a time at Wolf Creek when a skunk climbed underneath the washer out on the porch, and we were going, here, kitty, 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 kitty. We had a lot of cats. Then I can remember when we first moved up from Texas. I remember Grandpa lived on, it seemed like a big farm. Had a lot of horses on it, and then he had a kind of a bunkhouse in part of the barn where the horses would come in and eat hay and stuff, and we'd go out there and visit him. You go past the airport and go a long ways out to the trees, and then I remember we'd go out there and visit him out there and get to step up into the barn to go into his house. I can remember that about him. But and then he lived in a trailer house at Uncle Gus's up on the hill by their log house until he took overdose of aspirin. And then he kind of got got in trouble. He got sick. But
Do you remember anything about Grandpa Hillock down in Texas?
yeah, he lived in an old chicken house converted into a 3-room, and I could remember the smell of kerosene when you go in, because his kitchen we'd come in through the kitchen in the back door and walk in, and he had a coal oil stove that he cooked on there. And you could smell the coal oil and kerosene kind of smell a lot alike, and I can remember that smell. And then his bedroom, and then there was kind of a living room, and the whole thing was probably, looking at now, it's probably about 20 feet long. And just like this, and it's kind of a hallway that goes through the 3 rooms. And one night, his cupboards was on the one wall, and then I can remember the stove there. I can't remember if there was a table there, but I think there was. I can remember one night we was there, and lightning come in the house. It was a ball of lightning rolled around that stove, and we had to sit very still because we could got hurt with it. But I can remember that, and I can remember the huge deer head. It seemed like big deer head in his bedroom up on the wall in his bedroom.
Let's talk a little bit about that ball of lightning that you mentioned here, because we remember stories from Aunt Betty about it as well. But so I want to get this involved. In Texas, this ball of lightning comes in the house and goes and rolls
about the size
around.
of a basketball.
Okay, and rolls
on
around
metal stuff.
On metal stuff.
Yeah.
Now, how long did it do this?
Well, it seemed like a long time, but I'm sure it wasn't very long at a time. It was there because we had to stand or sit very still.
Well, it was long enough for you to realize that you had to sit still and around this thing, so it had to be at least,
Couple of minutes.
10, 20 seconds?
Yeah,
or
a minute or so.
And
But I can't remember how it got out, if it, any damage, if it did any damage, I can't remember that.
But
I can't remember.
how did it come in?
I can't remember how.
It just poof, it was there.
Yeah, it was kind of like a glowing yellowy orange. I can remember that. between this size and a basketball size rolling around that stove and the metal in there. We just kind of sat there until it went away.
I
And what?
remember that.
Yeah.
It'll run down a fence too.
Wow.
Yeah,
It'll hit a barbed wire fence and go down the barbed wire fence.
Wow.
Cow's horns will do that with blue sparks from lightning.
Really?
Oh yeah, they bounce back between their
Like
horns.
static, because their horns are made of hair.
Hmm.
Well, they
Oh,
weren't antlers
really?
made of hair, but horns are horns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can remember going to Grandpa Hillock's funeral. And that was a bizarre thing. I remember there was a curtain around him, and I can't remember which one of the Hillock boys, it was cousins, and they had coins on his eyes like this, and they said, well, his eyes will open. You know, we were not to touch, but one of them did. See, I told you there were eyeballs in there.
Oh,
It's Dory and I.
Well, I thought it was
told
the
her-
boys.
I told her they took people's eyes out. They had Grandpa's body on the kitchen table, and everybody was there for the wake. And Gloria and I were arguing over whether they had eyeballs after they died. And I said, no, that's where marbles come from.
Oh, that's
When
sick.
the
That's
grown-ups
sick.
came in, Gloria's standing at his head with his top eyelid, and I'm on his chest with the bottom eyelids, and we're trying to pry his eyes open
Oh my
to make
God.
sure that he still had his eyeballs, and that's where we got caught.
See, I was
And
blaming
the
it on
eyeballs
Hillock
are-
cousins.
The eyeballs are not marbles.
No, no, they're
So
not.
not where marbles come from.
I can-
Gloria and I were laughing about that when she came up here the last time. We got
I
our
can remember we
fannies warm for that.
got new white hats or something like that for his funeral. I can remember that was at Aunt Dorothy's before we went to the funeral. And then it seemed like very short time we moved to Washington.
Wow. Okay, let's stop there for real quick.